All right. So if none of you have ever done or seen the lightning talks that they do at the Blender Conference in Amsterdam, it's one of my favorite things in the world. They are 5 minutes a piece, and people show off whatever cool thing they want to talk about, and it's always an interesting thing. So we're going to walk our way through it. You might see the desktop because we're cloning things, but that's because that's the excitement of lightning talks. So fantastic. We'll get started. Come on up.
Yes! That's loud. Ooh. BCON 2024, we're here. We did it. You know what? Let's try something different. I need everybody to clap, all right? Ready? Blend. Mama said, mama, who stop? Thank you very much. You can stop. So Blender Battle, that's the name of our talk. That's how I shake off my nerves. I just get outside of myself a little bit. And what I just did is important. I promise you. We'll talk about that a little bit later. I don't have a clicker. Do I just tell somebody to click? Don't click yet, but is that what we're doing? You have it. All right. So before we get into the chat, just a quick story about me, me in a nutshell. You could go ahead and click. My name is Corey McKinney Jr. That's my name for all my socials. I moved out from New Jersey to Los Angeles to pursue acting, right? I wasn't very fulfilled with that. It was cool, it was fun, but helping other people tell their stories made me want to tell my own. So I gathered a bunch of friends, started buying a bunch of filmmaking equipment, made a movie for Instagram. You can watch it if you follow me. But that's not what this is about. Filmmaking equipment, very expensive, very time-consuming as well, but it was still a lot better. But 2 years ago, I discovered Blender, and it pieced everything together, okay? That's what we're all here for, Blender. These are some of the characters I made in Blender, and I like to have fun with it. My style is a little bit more cartoony, a little psychedelic, and I like to create the stuff that I see in my head at 3 in the morning when I can't go to sleep. All right? What about you, baby?
Well, as for me, I moved from New Jersey to California as a painter artist. And I kind of just got tired of staring at my paintings, and it wasn't moving. It just was there. It got kind of stagnant, you know? So I was like, I want to animate. Started Blender, and I never looked back. And these are just some of my characters that I started working on. And I'm learning animation right now. So if you want to check out my Instagram, it's gisellemarte.art, and my TikTok, and then YouTube. And that's me.
Welcome to the show where my girlfriend and I battle each other in Blender. Most of you guys don't know what we're talking about. Some of you might, but if you scan that QR code, you know exactly what we're talking about. We created the channel because Blender could be very, it could be a headache sometimes. You want to make this thing. Oh my God, if I could just make this happen, I'd be so happy. But there's steps to learning how to even do a fraction of what you're thinking about. So we created this channel so we could have fun with Blender. Remember when Blender was fun, when you first found out how to delete the default cube? Awesome. That's what this channel likes to do. And that's what I did in the very beginning of this talk. That's the energy we bring to the channel. We don't take ourselves too seriously, all right?
Our slogan is, don't be so serious.
Yes, please. Please. We care about what we put out into the world on our individual channels, our individual pages. We give a shit about what we put out to the world, but sometimes you just want to giggle and fart. You know what I'm talking about? So, what do you want to talk about for this channel?
Honestly, we started this channel originally just to have fun. We told ourselves we're not gonna take it so seriously, but we do take it serious, because we want it to grow. But the main thing is that we just want to have fun. We want to go with the flow and not feel like it's this 9 to 5, basically.
Yeah, for example, our last episode, we had a timer. We had to make Mario in 2 hours or something like that. We had to make Mario. We had to screen record the whole thing. We had to rig it. We had to go make a little render for it and compare it. And I felt for that episode, I did a little bit better for Blender for that episode. What are you talking about?
No, you didn't. No.
You think yours is better?
Mine was more original.
But mine was more functional though. Mine could move more.
We're gonna have to take it to Blender Battle.
All right, yeah, you guys could go ahead, and we're gonna have to settle this when we get home, but you could go ahead and check out the QR code. Thank you guys for listening, and we love Blender so much. Thank you, Tan. Thank you for all of you who do the tutorials that you do, because we wouldn't know how to do half of what we do without y'all. Thank you.
Next up, whoop, hello. Oh,
Sorry, we also have business cards if you guys want to come up to us and you can scan it and take one. Okay, that's it.
Next up, we have J. Andrew Medina.
Hello, everybody. So you can call me Drew, and I love using Blender to help me visualize science things. So we all know how computers and programs like Blender process color. It's three little letters that we all know very well. And that gives us a hint as to how the human brain processes color because, well, it's based on human vision. However, not all humans see the same way. Some people are colorblind, meaning they see less colors than average. And very rarely, someone is born with something called tetrachromia, which means that their brain makes up even more colors than the average person does. And that is the rabbit hole that I've been going down recently. But before we try to visualize what their colors look like, let's take a step back and try to simulate the world from a colorblind person's perspective. Let's see, how can I get the video to play? Can we get the video to play? Well, anyway, the video's not playing, but I made a little node in shader nodes that can take any video or image and convert it from RGB into how a colorblind person would see it. So everything that is blue turns into cyan, which most of us think of as a light blue anyway. Everything that is green, yellow, red, orange, or brown are just different shades of red, maybe darker, lighter, more gray, saturated, whatever. I've used Blender to help me come to this theory because usually you'll see optometrists approximate colorblind colors as just blue and yellow. However, I am of the opinion that red and cyan are the first two colors that the brain creates in that dimension. It gets more complicated than that. But basically, we take those four colors, black, white, red, and cyan, duplicate them over, and we get the colors that we have. That's a simple way of thinking about it. Anyway, you take that same concept and bring it up to tetrachromacy, where you take our 8 basic color families and duplicate it into a total of 16 without black and white. That's a total of 14 totally distinct families of color. Now, of course, we can't actually see this color, and even if there were people with tetrachromia here in this audience, they wouldn't be able to see their own colors on this screen because, well, it's an RGB display. But that puts us in the same position as someone with color blindness. On this side, left and right, I can't remember, we have color blindness, which is just the two colors. In the middle, what I've tried to do is to simulate what our colors look like to a colorblind person, which you can't do completely. Basically, I've taken cyan and split it into two darker versions of cyan to represent green and blue, which is a good enough approximation, but still a colorblind person can't see what green and blue actually look like. Well, now there should be a video here too, but it's probably not going to play. That's okay. But we are in that same position as colorblind people when it comes to trying to visualize tetrachromatic colors. So we take our two-dimensional color wheel in their color space. If you click on the black, the two weird shapes there, maybe that'll play the video? Yeah, maybe. Let's see. Yes, awesome. Okay, so what I've done in Blender is tetrachromats have 4 primary colors, not RGB, they have 4. So if you turn on one at a time, and then you go to 2, and then you turn that one off and turn that one on, and you represent each of those transitions as an edge, there could be a gradient in there, but I've just cut them into a solid boundary for each unique color family. But each vertex represents one of those color families. And the fun thing about this is we can go to the next one now. If you can close out of the video, please. Yes. So if I go to the next one, we can map this dodecahedron out like a planet. And I've tried my best to mark the colors that, if I look up online, people who claim to have tetrachromacy, what they would name the colors. You don't know if you can trust that for sure, but I've done my best to map them out here. And the stripes are just colors that we can't actually see, but Blender has helped me kind of imagine what these colors might look like if I could actually see them. I hope I can. There are so many more things I would love to tell you about this, but instead I will encourage you, if you want to check out my YouTube channel, where I will hope to post science content, and hopefully I'll make a longer video about more of the science. Thank you, Blender, for helping me do fun science stuff.
And next up, we have Adam Conine. Should be.
That was working first. Hey everyone. My name's Adam. I am a musician turned 3D artist turned developer. And in my journey, I've found the need to make visuals for my music and synchronize that, and I found a lack of tools to really make that process easy. So I've developed this add-on. It's called geoMIDI. First, MIDI, for anyone unfamiliar, it stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface. It's the data standard for digital music information. So notes, pitches, and modulation is stored in MIDI. So I made a new file format because MIDI files are binary, and I needed plain text in order for Blender to be able to read the data. The add-on's in beta right now. So it takes continuous control, which is essentially, if you think of like keyframe F-curves in Blender, it's the same concept, change over time. So geoMIDI imports continuous control data, and it converts it to Blender keyframes. And it starts in a digital audio workstation, and then you export your MIDI file, bring it into Blender with the add-on, and use that to animate. You can have up to 128 channels of continuous control data, which means you can potentially have 128 keyframe channels, all from one MIDI file. So on the left, there's Ableton, and then that same data brought into Blender. It calculates the frame rate and the tempo, and makes it all sync up automatically. And you can use drivers or geometry nodes to drive any parameter you would like. So here's a demo. All right, so here in Ableton, I have 5 tracks, and then I've made a single MIDI clip and created this modulation, tempo synced, to represent what's happening in each track. And so there's the MIDI clip. You just export it as MIDI. And then the part that's not shown here is there's an external script to convert the MIDI file to a geoMIDI file. So once you have that in Blender with the geoMIDI add-on, you go in and import the geoMIDI file. And then for each channel, it creates a new object, just a single vertex, and the position, the Y position of each vertex is animated, automatically keyframed to match the continuous control data from the MIDI file. So there's the data. Those are the 5 channels that I made in Ableton, are now here in Blender. And then here's a little example. So that's just 5 things. You can have up to 128 and one MIDI file. So yeah, the future plans I have. Right now, it's just continuous control data is compatible, but MIDI files also have the notes that you play. So I want to include that data and be able to use that in Blender. The conversion script right now, it's a command line Python script. I'd like to make a drag and drop version for easier conversion. And then also be able to use that note data and whatever data you like to populate a scene with assets and have a starting point a lot quicker, take away some of the setup time for getting motion graphics or whatever you want to do. So thank you. Big shout out to Mido is a Python library that did a lot of the heavy lifting for me for converting the binary. And I'm out of time. Serpents is great. Thank you, CG Cookie. Thank you, Blender. And thank you, guys.
All right, next up we have Kenny Phases.
Yeah, that's not the first slide.
That's not the first slide.
Sorry. I'll still go up there. All right. Sorry, guys. It looks like there's a permission issue. Sorry about that. If we could just go back to the first slide. Hopefully it still works. All right. All right. I am Kenny Phases. Very nice to meet you all. I'm extremely nervous. Very happy to be here. I've met some incredible people, incredibly talented. So hopefully you guys still think this is pretty cool. We're going to go ahead and move forward here. This is some of my work. Most of it can be found on Instagram and YouTube. I do tutorials, I do client projects, I do private tutoring, $50 an hour right now, but my rate might go up soon now that I'm at Blender conference. I'm also a full-time middle school business and technology teacher, and I do teach my students Blender. They absolutely love it. These are some companies that I've worked with. And why are we all here? Well, we're here because we love to create, and I would love to share something with you that I've created that I truly am proud of. This is my procedural blueprint shader. Now, there are other shaders on the market that allow you to create blueprints. However, I have not seen anything that allows you to transition from a solid color to a blueprint. So I solved that problem. I sat down, began building out this blueprint shader, and I did use my MacBook with an M1 chip to build this out, so no excuses, doesn't matter what laptop you have. It's actually a pretty powerful machine, and as you can see here on the right, we have an animatable empty that we can actually transition from a solid object to a blueprint shader. So again, I haven't seen anything else like this out there. If you have, please reach out to me. I'd love to see it. It's currently available on Gumroad and Blender Market. Again, fully procedural. It works on any object regardless of the underlying geometry. And the more geometry you have, the better result you're going to get. All right, these are just a couple more examples here. Eevee and cycles are fully supported. To get Eevee to work, I had to just use alpha hashed for the transparencies. I'm sure a lot of you guys have already been reverse engineering this in your brain, and you're probably thinking you can create it, and I encourage you to do so. I'd love to see your version of this. This is a quick node setup right here. I'm going to go through a couple of the nodes, and I wanted to give a quick shout out to Blender and thank them for making it so easy for me to create this shader. The amount of nodes that we have access to is incredible, and I've never seen another program where I can just simply drag and drop and begin creating a shader like this. There's plenty of tutorials and resources online. Went on the Discord server, and I got plenty of feedback from other people on what I should add to the shader. The three main shader nodes that I used are layer weight, noise, and brick texture. You probably already guessed that. The layer weight is kind of our hero here in this situation. This is the full node setup on the right. So when you guys download this for free, you can check it out. You're more than welcome to reverse engineer it. We have a lot of sliders that we can adjust for our shader. Hopefully this video plays. If it's not, I'm just gonna skip ahead here. All right, that is my fault. I'm embarrassed. Hold on. Sorry, guys. All right, here we go. So a couple render times for you. On the left, we have a cycles render. On the right, we have Eevee. Now, this is 1920 by 1920. We're getting about a 21-second render for cycles and a 2-second render for Eevee. So it's pretty quick, and you can probably optimize it to make it even faster. I can't tell the difference. I think they both look incredible. Let's go ahead and move forward here.
Again, I am gonna not be able to fall asleep tonight because these videos aren't playing. That is my fault. Okay, yep. All right, well, we learn from our mistakes. All right, but Kenny, will it work with textured objects? Yes, it will. I have a version 2 that's still in development, the little shoe example right here, so you can drop in your own image textures. I have a full tutorial on how to walk you through on how to do this. Version 2 is still in development, but again, I'm proud to say that it does work with fully textured objects, and you can still animate them. I've got a nice little duck here. There was an example video on the right, but I can show you guys a demo if you want to meet up afterwards. I can give you my business card and show you a real-time demo. A couple reviews right here. As you can see, Blender Guru absolutely loves the shader as well as CG Cookie. And then this guy down here told me that his grandmother could make this shader. So still waiting to hear back. I think she's still working on it, so I'll keep you updated on that one. Now this is fully available for free on Gumroad. I will admit I did charge for it before, but in light of the Blender conference, we're all here to create, to share ideas, so I didn't feel right charging for it anymore, and I'm just gonna make it free from now on. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. I cannot believe these videos didn't play, but feel free to talk to me after and I'll give you a demo. Thank you.
Next on deck, Adam Preisler.
Hi guys. Okay, this is quite loud. So it's 60 slides, 5 minutes. I need a clicker. It's over there. So people have been calling me crazy for having 100 slides for 20 minutes, but this is something else. So a couple of years ago, 7 years ago, I was 25 years old, 13 years with Blender. I started with this splash screen. And my story back then was that I was working for Asymmetrica in London for 2 years and 2 months, not 2 days. I was working in 3ds Max and Corona, which later on in my life took on a different meaning, the word, sort of. We were working for companies like Foster and Partners and the others that are mentioned there. So quite big architecture firms, lots of visualizations. And I was using Blender for decimating the meshes or modeling the parks and then importing it into 3ds Max. And there's this guy who was also our client, and he was from a wealthy family, and he was like, Adam, we have bought a building in LA and I want you to model it. And this is all he had. So in June 2017 we have this in Unreal Engine. That's why I have the t-shirt. And so you can see it's not very detailed. It's basically just the building itself. This was supposed to be the rooftop area. Then in July, I was filling in lots of the details. And he was telling me Adam, you should come to LA. You can be in the building. Would you like to do that for 2 weeks? I was like, hell yeah. That sounds great. So this is not the right boarding, but I like the seat, yeah, 3D. It's from Prague to London. And so I was flying to LA. The first photo I took was a ceiling at the airport, then the pavement, of course. This is how we were driving from the airport with the client. And of course, palms and Adams Boulevard, yes. And this is a photo that wasn't on the right, but I really liked it and I didn't know how to use it, so it's here. And this is already downtown LA. That's the building in the middle, yeah. So this is how it looked inside. This is the 3rd floor. And this is where I was working mostly, at the table in the middle over there. I had my notebook. And one day, I spent the entire day just climbing through the building and taking hundreds of photos of the entire building to recreate it. I was also taking photos of the brick wall and creating a texture that's actually in Materialic. It's called American Bond. Talk about a good name for it. And so it's slightly improved in Unreal. This is the final version that's in the Blender Cycles, rendered in Cycles. And this is how it looks 4 months back. So it's coming along nicely, and it needs to be painted, and the floor needs to be finished, but looks nice. So I was improving the model in Blender. We were putting in some details, like tables, chairs. Then we also removed them again. This is the final version of this space. Then the Unreal. Come on, guys. There's a difference. Doing visualizations, you just fill all the pixels in. You make sure they are correct, and it's correct. With Unreal and virtual reality, and you can go anywhere in the building. There's so many problems, so many problems, so many problems, so many problems. And I was sorting those for days, weeks, so long, We're halfway through, 2 minutes. Well, that's not good. So there's been like 2 versions of the stairs. Then there's been the sign, the Barker sign, and the restaurant area, the alley behind the restaurant. This is the lobby and the reception area. We were doing the elevators from the drawings, from the architects. We were doing the lobby design, different versions, the different versions of the cabin of the elevator, the panels, the control mechanism, whatever. You know what it is. And I was even like sending the measurements back to the architects. And in the end, it's not FPS because it's not a shooter, but it's like FP, but no one knows what FP stands for. So it's like first person Unreal Engine project and VR. Unfortunately, I don't have videos from that. It's a bit weird. But I even had like a control, like guide to know like what you can press and what it does. This is the final result. So let's see, we have a minute. Okay. So I was monitoring the context too. Yeah, let's just go through this. This is the retail area, and it's all in Unreal, all real time, 90 frames per second on 1080 back then. So yeah, the rooftop area, we were doing the Los Angeles in the distance. This is the martial arts room, and now this is the GIF, yeah, and it goes through the entire building. So like, it's 3,000 objects and I think 7 million triangles, but like actually low poly. So it's been a tremendous amount of work. I learned a lot, and then I didn't use Unreal for 7 years. And I'm coming back now. Yeah, so we went from this to this, and here are like five slides left, like just the cycles renders. This is the NPR denoising, when the NPR denoising happened. Okay, thank you very much. Bye.
And next we have Kevin Chambers.
Hello. So I'm here to basically ask the question, what about 2D? This is, of course, at a 3D conference for Blender. But what about the open source world of 2D? I'm betting that a sizable portion of your pipelines, even as you're doing 3D work, is in 2D. And we have potentially a few open source options, but have they really reached the same level of success as Blender has for encompassing the entire pipeline from, Blender does sculpting, it does animation, it does rendering, it does compositing, all those parts of your pipeline. And there really aren't any all-encompassing open source tools that do that really well. So I'm actually just going to play this video, and I will do a little narration at the same time. But basically, our goal here is building Graphite, which is a brand new attempt we started 3 years ago at an all-encompassing 2D tool for every part of your 2D workflow, from vector to raster. And eventually, we're also going to be getting into animation. And the really cool part about this is that we're taking many of the methodologies from 3D, specifically proceduralism, built with nodes and non-destructive principles at the core. And we're basically using what looks like layers at this moment, but pretty soon you're going to see how this actually is nodes under the hood. And we're able, we can see the node graph, and we're able to put together a bunch of different nodes and start making procedural setups with what is basically a vector editing tool. I'm actually not aware of any other procedural 2D tools. So we're basically the first and only 2D tool that allows you to make this kind of thing. I'm sure you could probably make it in Blender if you wanted to use the Z-axis as a layer stacking system, but that might not be the most efficient way of doing things because you don't necessarily have a purpose-built pen tool to draw specific shapes, and you don't really have a whole plethora of tooling that is normally provided by ordinary 2D packages. So we can see now we are already creating that B, and then now we're starting to stylize the con part as well. And I'll also mention a few other things while we're at this. Basically, one thing I've noticed about the Blender formula for success is that they took the approach of not imitating, but innovating, by bringing forth new features that other software, even the commercial software, those did not have those features. For example, the fully interactive viewport that you could view your final render in, that was years ahead of any of the competing software. So we're basically taking that approach of the node graph and bringing that to the field of 2D editing. And going forward, since we did start out with vector, because that's sort of the area that needs the most love at this moment, But we're also moving forward to having a full-on raster workflow. So edit your photos, do painting, anything else that you need to do editing to build textures, to build basically any part of your pipeline. And then, of course, you can export using standard formats to Blender. And pretty soon we'll also have the ability to export sort of as programs. It can take some input and you can embed it in your game. You can embed it probably in a future plugin that we'll have for Blender and bring those assets in and feed it with data, procedural data, and it will render content or textures or whatever kind of data-oriented approach to design you want for your assets. Okay, we finished the video. Okay, here is a quick view of a mock-up for where we're about to be probably about 6 months down the road with raster. So this is an example of a photo editing workflow. And specifically what you can see on the right side, that's the outliner view. That is equivalent to this node graph here. So this is a slightly more advanced version of the node graph once we have a few extra features. And this allows us to basically have a description of layers and a description of the nodes that build these things, and it allows you to do things that you can't do in other editors, such as, for example, at the very bottom left, we have an image that actually gets used twice. It gets used as a mask, and you basically use the magic wand to non-destructively produce a mask for that, and you can actually completely switch out that image with a different image. If it's similar enough that has a sort of similar sky color, you don't even have to adjust the magic wand node, but you can actually adjust the backdrop by just replacing one image, even though it's used in several places through that node system. But yeah, so basically at this moment, we need people who do proceduralism stuff to use it and show us your use cases. And we need to kind of build a bigger node catalog at this point and get inspiration from people who are using the software. So if this is interesting and you're excited about this going forward, we're just getting started 3 years in, but we now want to move forward for the next 30 years. Thank you.
And next up, we have Avery Mushbach.
I was a software engineer at Google for 4 years, and then I got laid off. I had been working on a self-portrait on the weekends while I was a software engineer at Google, so after I got laid off, the first project I worked on was to finish up my self-portrait, but after that I started working on the Gingerbread Christmas Carol, I'll show you what that's about. Right, so as you can see, I'm basing it on this movie from 1951 because that's in the public domain. I can use it. I'm doing all of the modeling, texturing, rigging, animating, and lighting. It's all mine. Yeah, I'm not using photogrammetry, not using the generative AI, and not sourcing textures from photographs. This is all just my art, and hoping to do that whole movie. I've been working on this for almost a year now, and I guess maybe I'll be working on it for another 2 years. I was laid off for Google and didn't look for another job. I'm just living on my savings because this is what I want to do, and I won't be able to keep that up forever, but I want this movie to exist. Yeah, so I'm just letting you know I'm here doing this. Yeah, I'm alone in my apartment day after day, silently working on this, and nobody knows. So, you may. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to work on this for another 2 years, and it turns out no one cares. So. And if you've got any constructive feedback for me based on what you saw, then I'll be glad to hear that too. Yeah. All right.
And next we have Kenneth Wilder.
Oh, thank you. Hello. Here to give a brief presentation on our workflow that I work for the Asylum in Burbank, a visual effects artist. Been a visual effects artist now for about 35 years, primarily using a program known as Lightwave 3D. A couple of bandits here as well who use that program. When Flip Fluids and I found out about dynamic paint, I needed a project to use that on. That got me interested in Blender and finding out just what kind of power it had inside of it. And I was not disappointed. When I made it to the Asylum, the project that I started on with was a movie called Swim, where I first used Flip Fluids in production. The next movie that I worked on that I'm going to show a brief video on in a second was called Ape versus Mecha Ape. In that movie that we did, I was tasked with the idea they wanted to redo the main character, the gorilla, and I suggested to do the fur and the shading in Blender, but they said, but Ken, how are we going to get our Lightwave stuff in there and match everything? Do we do it just compositing, or how are we going to do it? And Blender, fortunately, reads the Lightwave MDD format, which is Lightwave's cache format. So I formulated a workflow around bringing in the MDDs, FBX into Blender. I was able to shade the character, add fur. The animation came from motion capture. You're going to see motion capture and hand animation. I was tasked with wrangling all of that and bringing it in. So I have a brief video showing some other projects as well, and I hope you enjoy. No audio, sorry. We work with a very talented group of animators, a small group. Our projects are relatively brief. We don't get a lot of time to animate. And Blender, I just gotta say, Blender is amazing, especially coming from Lightwave. The amount of data that you can move around in this program is amazing. All of this here is Lightwave, After Effects, and Blender integrated together. So that's the MDDs of Abe. This is Lightwave, After Effects composited, Unreal background, Blender Ape in the foreground. A lot of fun. Oh, thank you so much. A lot of fun. Yeah, hand animated there. Whoa, is that a gator? Jeez, I think he's looking for meth. Here's our flip fluids stuff. These are all recent projects, so I'm extremely tired, but it's okay. Some fellow companion animation, some more flip fluid stuff. Just really impressed with how it integrated. I was able to get a couple of other people to get them up to speed to help me out on learning flip fluids and things like that. And yeah, it's been fantastic. We love the workflow, and I love Blender. So thank you very much.
So that was Lightning Talks. Told you it'd be fun. And back to our regularly scheduled other excitement. Have a good time.